Storybugs!
Hello and welcome to Story Time. I'm really glad you're back. We're going to keep reading in The Little Prince, written by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And we are on chapter 7. When we last left off, the little prince was talking about sunsets. And I can't wait to see what's coming next. Chapter 7. On the 5th day, thanks again to the sheep, another secret of the prince's life was revealed to me. Abruptly, with no preamble, he asked me, as if it were the fruit of a problem long pondered in silence. If a sheep eats bushes, does he eat its flowers too? A sheep eats whatever it finds. Even flowers that have thorns? Yes, even flowers that have thorns. Then what good are thorns? I didn't know. At the moment, I was very busy trying to unscrew a bolt that was jammed in my engine. I was quite worried, for my plane crash was beginning to seem extremely serious, and the lack of drinking water made me fear the worst. What good are thorns? The little prince never let go of a question once he had asked it. I was annoyed by my jammed bolt, and I answered without thinking. Thorns are no good for anything. They're just flowers' way of being mean. Oh! But after a silence, he lashed out at me with a sort of bitterness. I don't believe you. Flowers are weak. They're naive. They reassure themselves whatever way they can. They believe their thorns make them frightening. I made no answer. At that moment I was thinking, if this bolt stays jammed, I'll knock it off with the hammer. Again, the little prince disturbed my reflections. Then you think flowers... No, not at all. I don't think anything. I just said whatever came into my head. I'm busy here with something serious. He stared at me, astounded. Something serious? He saw me holding my hammer, my fingers black with grease, bending over an object he regarded as very ugly. You talk like the grown-ups. That made me a little ashamed, but he added mercilessly, You confuse everything. You've got it all mixed up. He was really very annoyed. He tossed his golden curls in the wind. I know a planet inhabited by a red-faced gentleman. He's never smelled a flower. He's never looked at a star. He's never loved anyone. He's never done anything except add up numbers. And all day long he says over and over, just like you, I'm a serious man, I'm a serious man. And that puffs him up with pride. But he's not a man at all. He's a mushroom. He's a what? A mushroom. The little prince was now quite pale with rage. For millions of years, flowers have been producing thorns. For millions of years, sheep have been eating them all the same. And it's not serious, trying to understand why flowers go to such trouble to produce thorns that are good for nothing. It's not important, the war between sheep and flowers. It's no more serious and no more important than the numbers that the fat red gentleman is adding up. Suppose I happen to know a unique flower, one that exists nowhere in the world except on my planet, one that a little sheep can wipe out in a single bite one morning, just like that, without even realizing what he's doing. Isn't that important? His face turned red now, and he went on. If someone loves a flower, of which just one example exists, among all the millions and millions of stars, that's enough to make him happy when he looks at the stars. He tells himself, my flower's up there somewhere. But if the sheep eats the flower, then for him it's as if suddenly all the stars went out. And that isn't important? He couldn't say another word. All of a sudden he burst out sobbing. Night had fallen. I dropped my tools. What did I care about my hammer, about my bolt, about thirst and death? There was, on one star, on one planet, on mine, the earth, a little prince to be consoled. I took him in my arms. I rocked him. I told him, the flower you love is not in danger. I'll draw you a muzzle for your sheep. I'll draw you a fence for your flower. I didn't know what to say. How clumsy I felt. I didn't know how to reach him, where to find him. It's so mysterious, the land of tears. Chapter 8. I soon learned to know that flower better. On the little prince's planet, there had always been very simple flowers, decorated with a single row of petals, so that they took up no room at all and got in no one's way. They would appear one morning in the grass and would fade by nightfall. This one had grown from a seed brought from who knows where, and the little prince had kept a close watch over a sprout that was not like any of the others. It might have been a new kind of baobab, but the sprout soon stopped growing and began to show signs of blossoming. The little prince, who had watched the development of an enormous bud, realized that some sort of miraculous apparition would emerge from it. But the flower continued her beauty preparations in the shelter of her green chamber, selecting her colors with the greatest care, and dressing quite deliberately, adjusting her petals one by one. She had no desire to emerge all rumpled like the poppies. She wished to appear only in the full radiance of her beauty. Here's a little sprout at the bottom. Oh yes, she was quite vain, and her mysterious adornment had lasted days and days. And then one morning, precisely at sunrise, she showed herself. There she is. And after having labored so painstakingly, she yawned and said, I'm hardly awake. Forgive me, I'm still all untidy. But the little prince couldn't contain his admiration. How lovely you are. Aren't I? The flower answered sweetly. And I was born the same time as the sun. The little prince realized that she wasn't any too modest. She was so dazzling. I believe it is breakfast time, she soon added. Would you be so kind as to tend me? And the little prince, utterly abashed, having gone to look for a watering can, served the flower. She had soon begun tormenting him with her rather touchy vanity. One day, for instance, alluding to her 4 thorns, she remarked to the little prince, I'm ready for tigers with all their claws. You think the flower could stand a chance against a tiger? There are no tigers on my planet, the little prince had objected. And besides, tigers don't eat weeds. I'm not a weed, the flower replied sweetly. Forgive me. I am not at all afraid of tigers, but I have a horror of drought. You wouldn't happen to have a screen? A horror of droughts. That's not a good sign for a plant, the little prince had observed. How complicated this flower is. After dark you will put me under glass. How cold it is where you live. Quite uncomfortable. Where I come from. But suddenly she broke off. She had come here as a seed. She couldn't have known anything of other worlds. Humiliated at having let herself be caught on the verge of so naive a lie, she coughed 2 or 3 times in order to put the little prince in the wrong. That screen? I was going to look for one, but you were speaking to me." Then she made herself cough again in order to inflict a twinge of remorse on him all the same. There's the screen. So the little prince, despite all the goodwill of his love, had soon come to mistrust her. He had taken seriously certain inconsequential remarks, and had grown very unhappy. "I shouldn't have listened to her," he confided to me one day. "You must never listen to flowers. You must look at them and smell them. Mine perfumed my planet, but I didn't know how to enjoy that. The business about the tiger claws, instead of annoying me, ought to have moved me." And he confided further, "In those days I didn't understand anything. I should have judged her according to her actions, not her words. She perfumed my planet and lit up my life. I should never have run away. I ought to have realized the tenderness underlying her silly pretensions. Flowers are so contradictory, but I was too young to know how to love her." Chapter 9. In order to make his escape, I believe he took advantage of a migration of wild birds. On the morning of his departure, he put his planet in order. He carefully raked out his active volcanoes. The little prince possessed 2 active volcanoes, which were very convenient for warming his breakfast. He also possessed 1 extinct volcano, but as he said, "You never know." So he raked out the extinct volcano too. If they are properly raked out, volcanoes burn gently and regularly without eruptions. Volcanic eruptions are like fires in a chimney. Of course, on our Earth, we are much too small to rake out our volcanoes. That's why they cause us so much trouble. The little prince also uprooted, a little sadly, the last baobab shoots. He believed he would never be coming back. But all these familiar tasks seemed very sweet to him on the last morning. And when he watered the flower one last time and put her under glass, he felt like crying. "Goodbye," he said to the flower. She did not answer him. "Goodbye," he repeated. The flower coughed, but not because she had a cold. "I've been silly," she told him at last. "I ask your forgiveness. Try to be happy." He was surprised that there were no reproaches. He stood there, quite bewildered, holding the glass bell in mid-air. He failed to understand this calm sweetness. Here he is holding the glass. "Of course I love you," the flower told him. "It was my fault you never knew. It doesn't matter, but you were just as silly as I was. Try to be happy. Put that glass thing down. I don't want it any more." "But the wind?" "My cold isn't that bad. The night air will do me good. I'm a flower." "But the animals?" "I need to put up with 2 or 3 caterpillars if I want to get to know the butterflies." Here's him sweeping his volcanoes really quick. So she says, "I need to put up with 2 or 3 caterpillars if I want to get to know the butterflies. Apparently they're very beautiful. Otherwise, who will visit me? You'll be far away. As for the big animals, I'm not afraid of them. I have my own claws." And she naively showed her 4 thorns. Then she added, "Don't hang around like this. It's irritating. You made up your mind to leave. Now go, or she didn't want him to see her crying. She was such a proud flower. And that's where we're going to end for today. That's kind of a sad little part, isn't it? Well, when we come back, we'll restart with chapter 10. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks for coming. If you guys enjoyed reading that story, would you please click subscribe down below? We read new stories just like this one every day, and we would love to let you know when there's a new story to listen to.